Hi there and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be comparing the Paralenz Underwater Camera Plus to the DJI Osmo Action. Coming up. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Matthias. For all those of you who don't know me, I'm an underwater cinematographer and filmmaker based in Zurich, Switzerland. Now, you might ask yourself, why do I want to compare the Paralenz Underwater Action Camera Plus to the Osmo Action from DJI? The reason is very simple. If you've been following my channel for a little while, you will probably know that I'm a big fan of the Paralenz cameras. I've been using them for quite a while now, and I'm very happy with the image that they produce. I'm very happy with basically the handling and everything that comes along with that camera. So shortly after DJI came out with their Osmo Action camera, I bought one for myself, but mainly I thought about using it on land. Now, after I bought it, I realized that the Osmo Action does have a dedicated underwater mode, basically a preset that you can use that helps with the color correction or the white balance when you shoot underwater. The funny thing is that the Osmo Action is waterproof down to about 11 meters. So I thought to myself, well, why not give it a shot? Why not go and take this camera on a snorkel session or even a shallow scuba dive and see what kind of footage I'll end up with. And I have to say that I was quite surprised by the footage that I was able to get out of the Osmo Action underwater. So in this video I want to go through a couple of key features and key points of those two cameras and compare them one to another and give you guys some sort of a decision-making tool when it comes to buying one of those two cameras, depending on what you want to use it. So let's talk about the build quality of those two cameras. First of all, now the Paralenz camera is built in a very sturdy way. The entire shell is made out of aluminum. They say it's airspace grade aluminum, and they claim that you can basically not destroy this camera even if you try. I haven't really gone that far, but it's been on a couple of trips with me. It's been on day boats, it's been on liveaboards, it's been living in my dive bag, in the pocket of my BCD. So it's been thrown around, it's been banged against tanks, it's been stepped on, all that sort of stuff. And like, other than a few scratches, it is still completely intact. So I can confirm that this camera is very well built, very robust, and they can take a lot of abuse during a dive vacation or a dive trip, which is great because then you don't really have to worry about damaging your camera, and you can worry about other things like preparing your dive or making sure that you get the best possible image that you want to get. The Osmo Action, on the other hand, is made primarily out of plastic, so I don't think that this camera is as sturdy as the Paralenz camera. I wouldn't feel very comfortable dropping this camera from any larger height onto like a hard floor. It will probably damage either the screen, the lens, anything like that. So from that point of view, I think that the Paralenz wins in this category. Now, when it comes to the ease of use of these cameras, I think that they're both equally good. With the Paralenz camera, it obviously only has one switch or one little lever that you can pull to activate it, to start shooting, to stop recording, and you've got your wheel that you can turn around here that will then swap in between the different modes. Very simple. One thing I don't like about it, or not too much I have to say, is that it doesn't have a screen, so you're not really sure what is in your frame and what isn't. For me personally, not a deal breaker, but I know that some people are very sensitive to the topic of not having a screen, seeing what you're recording. So yeah, that's a thing that the Paralenz doesn't have. If that's a must for you, then the Paralenz is probably not the right camera for you. The Osmo Action, on the other hand, does not have just one, but two screens, one at the back and another smaller one at the front, which can be very handy if you're doing selfie stuff, shooting. This comes in quite handy there. It is quite easy to handle. It's got only a couple of buttons. You can switch in between the most important modes quite easily. One of the things I don't like about this camera, especially using it underwater or on the surface while being in the water, is that some of the functions are accessed through the touch screen. And if the touchscreen is moist or wet, or even if your fingers are moist or wet, it sometimes doesn't react. So it's really difficult to get into a certain menu point and change, for example, the exposure, the white balance, that sort of stuff can be challenging. So just keep that in mind. On land it works great. Underwater it's not ideal to have to use the touchscreen to change in between different settings. But all in all, I would say that these two cameras are pretty equal when it comes to the ease of use and the handling of the cameras. Price point. An important one is how much money you'll have to spend to acquire one of these cameras. Paralenz Underwater Camera Plus will set you back around 700 or just under 700 US, which is quite a big price for a small action camera. The DJI Osmo Action, on the other hand, will only set you back around half of this, around $350. So for that reason, I think that the Osmo Action wins in this category. Another important point for me when I'm choosing an underwater camera is the field of view that I can expect from it. Now, the Paralenz camera will have a field of view of about 140 degrees, and it does not have a distortion in the image. So this means that you won't get the rounded edges on your frame or on your images, which is really nice to have. And 140 degrees is quite a large field of vision. Now, the Osmo Action on paper actually has even a slightly larger field of vision, which is 145 degrees, but it does have a distorted image, a slightly distorted image. If that doesn't bother you, you can live with that. Leave it on this, on the 145 degrees. Me personally, I don't like it. I don't like the rounded edges. I don't like the action camera look that it gives the footage. So what DJI has done, they've given you an option to actually de-wrap the image, and what it basically does, it straightens out those lines by cropping in a little bit. So you're probably gonna end up with around 130, maybe 120 degrees of field of vision, which is less than what the Paralenz gives you, but at least you're not getting the rounded edges. You get a proper image out of the camera. Nevertheless, I think that the Paralenz wins in this category simply because if you don't want to have rounded edges and no distortion, the Paralenz will actually have the larger and the wider field of vision compared to the Osmo Action. Now let's talk about the battery life that you can expect on either of those two cameras. The Paralenz, as they say in the documentation, will give you around 3 hours of battery life, which is quite good. Also a good thing is that the Paralenz can be charged via a USB-C port of a power bank. So even in between dives, you can just charge the camera that way. A negative here is that you cannot exchange the battery pack. It's integrated in the camera, so there's no way to change battery packs in between dives. You'll actually have to recharge the camera. And if you do not have enough time for that, that might be a problem. But keep in mind that 3 hours of battery life is quite a lot. It's probably going to give you enough time to film throughout 3 entire dives. And if you do any more than that during a day, then hopefully you'll get some longer surface times as well, where you can plug in the camera and recharge it this way. The Osmo Action, on the other hand, will probably give you around 1.5 hours to 2 hours of battery time on a battery pack. But the good thing here is that you can actually exchange the battery packs. You can take the battery out, swap it out for a new one, and you're good to go. Again, also it can be charged through a USB Type-C port, again also off a power bank if needed. So it makes it very versatile and very easy to use in that way. So again, I think we are having a draw here in this category between those two cameras. And now let's talk about the most important feature, the most important thing when we talk about these two cameras and filming underwater, which is the image quality. And if you've seen any of my previous videos about the Paralenz camera, and if you haven't, I'll link up the playlist here somewhere, so feel free to go and check them out. I have always been quite happy with the image that comes out of the Paralenz, within their limitations obviously. It's not a cinema camera, it's not a big sensor, so we need to take that in account. But for what it is, a small underwater action camera, I think that the image is quite good. The thing about this camera is also that it does have what we call the dynamic color correction, so it will correct the white balance as we change our depth on our dives, and that's just a feature that is really, really handy. I love that. It works quite well most of the time, not always, but quite well most of the time. One thing I don't like about the image of the Paralenz underwater camera is that, in my opinion, the image is oversaturated. There's too much saturation, there's too much contrast in the image as it comes out of the camera, and I don't have any way to control that inside the camera. So every time I film something with it, back in post-production, I'll have to pull down on the saturation and also on the contrast to make the image pleasing to me. Now the DJI Osmo Action is slightly different here. And I have to say I was very surprised looking at the footage and comparing it to the footage of the Paralenz Underwater Camera Plus. I ended up liking the footage that comes out of the Osmo Action better than what comes out of the Paralenz Underwater Camera. Reason being that with the Osmo Action I can actually shoot in what they call Cine-like D setting, which is like a picture profile that is quite flat. So therefore there is not a lot of contrast, not a lot of saturation in the picture, and I can just work on those parameters once I get everything on my computer and into Final Cut. And it just gives me more leeway to work with the footage and make the colors, the contrast, the saturation the way I like it. Also, I think that the image on the Osmo Action is slightly sharper than what you get on the Paralenz. And I also think that the colors, as long as you stay not deeper than 5, 6 or 7 meters, the colors using the white balance, underwater white balance mode, look more natural than what they do with the Paralenz camera. Both these cameras actually shoot in 4K, where the Osmo Action can actually shoot up to 60 frames in 4K. The Paralenz can only shoot up to 30 frames in 4K. So looking at all this, I would give the win in this category to the Osmo Action. I think it does produce a nicer image and has a better image quality than the Paralenz camera. I need to add something to this though, which is that with the Paralenz Action camera you can without any problem go down deeper and film down in a deeper depth as well, because the camera is waterproof down to 200 meters, and with the dynamic color correction it will also adjust automatically for the lost red color as you go deeper down. So even if you go deeper down with the Paralenz camera, your footage will still look fairly decent. On the other hand, with the Osmo Action, it is only rated down to 11 meters as it is, but you can obviously get an extra housing at an additional cost, and then you can take it down to 60 meters if you wish so. But the thing is that because it doesn't have the dynamic color correction, it doesn't have an electronic filter in it, as soon as you go down lower than, I would say, 8 meters, all your images, all your footage will become kind of grayish, bluish, greenish, depending on where you're filming and what the conditions are like. So you will need an additional red filter placed in front of your lens to compensate for the lost red color. So if you're looking at it from that point of view, The Paralenz is just good to go as it is. With the Osmo Action, if you want to take it deeper down than 8 or 10 meters, you will actually need extra accessories, extra equipment to be able to do so. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now let's look at special features last but not least, and the special feature that we have with the Paralenz underwater camera, the one that really sets it apart from any other cameras for shooting underwater, any other action cameras for shooting underwater, is that it actually has the so-called DCC, dynamic color correction. And as mentioned beforehand, what it does, it's an electronic red filter that is built into the camera, and the camera has a depth sensor, so it knows how deep it is, and according to the depth it will then either add or subtract red color to the image profile, and should basically give you a correct white balance on any given depth. That works quite well, not perfect, of course not, but it works quite well in most situations, especially as long as you have enough light and as long as you're not filming against the sun, you will be quite okay with using the dynamic color correction. The Osmo Action, on the other hand, has something very cool as well. It has a 8x slow motion mode, which is fantastic for one simple reason. Both of these cameras are quite good when it comes to in-body stabilization, but because they're small cameras and when you're filming in the water, especially snorkeling, you will shake more than what you're aware of, and it's quite likely that your footage will be quite shaky. Now, to compensate for that, what you can do is you can shoot in higher frame rates and then slow your footage down in post, so it will just look smoother and nicer and less wobbly and shaky as if you would have played it back at a normal speed. Now, being able to record in 8x slow motion, that footage will really look buttery smooth played back later on the computer, and that is very handy, in particular when you're filming while snorkeling or also diving. So I think that this feature is really outstanding on the Osmo Action, and that's why I am giving the win in this category, the special feature category, to the Osmo Action. So coming to a conclusion, what camera is for who and in what situations? Now, let's put it this way. If you're the type of guy who wants to just shoot a little bit while you're snorkeling or scuba diving, you don't really want to do much with the footage afterwards in terms of color correction and all that sort of stuff, then I would suggest that you get the Paralenz underwater camera with the dynamic color correction. It does all the white balancing for you. The footage looks okay as it is coming out of the camera, and if you're okay with the oversaturation, you don't really need to do much with that, with those clips. You can basically just use them and share them to your social media networks wherever you want, pretty much as they are. On the other hand, if you do want to get a higher quality image, and if you're ready to put some work into it, then I think that the Osmo Action is the right camera for you. Now, if you don't want to get a extra housing and a red filter for the Osmo Action, then I would not suggest to use it any deeper than let's say 7, maybe 8 meters. Above that, the preset white balance for underwater works very well, and in particular for snorkeling, I like this camera a lot. With the slow motion mode that you can use, you can get some really epic smooth footage, even just snorkeling from the surface or duck diving down a little bit, or on very shallow dives. But if you want to go any deeper, yeah, there is options. You can get housings, red filters, all the works for the camera, and then you can take it deeper down on a proper dive and take some really decent shots down there as well. The biggest thing for me is that the codec on the Osmo Action seems to be just better when it comes to post-production and pushing the colors than the codec on the Paralenz camera. So if you don't mind putting some work into your editing, color correcting, all that sort of stuff in post, then I would suggest the Osmo Action as an underwater camera. The thing is also that the Osmo Action is not just an underwater camera, but it's also an action camera above water on land, so you can use it in a more diverse way than what you would be able to do with the Paralenz camera, which is really a dedicated underwater camera. Right, a lot of talking, a lot of information, but I think we've made it to the end of this video. Thank you very much for sticking around this long. Well, what is your opinion? Have you used any of those two cameras and have you used them underwater? If so, what do you think about one or the other, or even if you've tried both? Which one do you like better? I'm really curious to hear your comments and your inputs on this. Please leave them down in the comments section and I'll be more than happy to engage in a discussion with you guys about this. So I hope this video was useful to you. I hope you got some information out of it. I hope you got some insights and some help deciding which camera would be better for the type of shooting that you guys want to do. If that's the case, please do hit that like button. You know, it means a lot to me. Also consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet, so you're not missing out on any future content that will be uploaded here on a regular basis. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you next week.